Welcome back to the BestWorst51 podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Layla. Today is another one of those solo episodes that I like to put out every once in a while, and I wanted to get something out before the end of the 2024 year. And so hopefully you'll enjoy maybe sticking with me for the next 20 minutes or so, just to kind of give you some reflections on moving forward to 2025. And so I'm entitling this podcast Back to the Basics, or Back to Basics, however you want to put it. So oftentimes around this time of the year, at the end of the year, people start thinking about or reflecting on the previous year or years, and they start thinking about, well, what's my plan for next year? And maybe it shows up in several forms. One of the forms is a New Year's resolution. And I think those are interesting. Those are great. I think many of us who have tried New Year's resolutions tend to not do so well with them. And so I know a lot of the people out there who are the experts, the motivational people who will talk about maybe not doing a New Year's resolution, but maybe starting right now. Don't wait till the New Year's to start your new thing. However, I can't say I'm going to do that because the holidays are coming up and I'm going to eat and drink and do all the stuff that's probably not as healthy for my body. So I probably won't start any of those things right now. But I do have my own approach to doing this type of work. And so when I say back to the basics, I've taken a lot of time in 2024 and my time here in Atlanta to really reflect on what I've experienced here. And I've experienced a lot of really highs and lows. When you're almost 50 and you move to a new city, it's not the easiest endeavor. I was fortunate that I had a handful of friends who lived in the area already, and also a number of former students from Washington University who live in the area. And so I've been able to connect with them, and that's been wonderful and helpful at this stage of my life to move to a new city. But it was challenging, right? There's new routines. There's waking up in a new home. Getting used to city living. St. Louis is a city for sure, but even in the suburban type area I live in, a lot of traffic, a lot of noises. There's a new job, getting used to a new campus culture and relating to my current supervisor in a different approach. She used to supervise me as a fellow, and now as chief of staff to her. It's a different relationship, and my role is different. So there's some adjustments there. And then just, being away from a lot of people who I've developed relationships with over the last 20-something years in the St. Louis region. I miss them dearly, and I have to admit that I've had my days and times of anxiety and some low moments during my transition to Atlanta. On the flip side, Atlanta is a city that I've said publicly before that everybody should visit. I've never seen a city so vibrant. There's something going on every evening and weekend, probably actually every weekday as well, but I'm usually in bed by then. There is food, great food. I think people here maybe don't think that's always the case, but I always wonder when people say Atlanta doesn't have good food, I wonder where have they visited or where have they lived? Because if you can't find a good meal in Atlanta, you're just not looking hard enough. Just all the entertainers come through here. Clearly all the politicians come through here. All the big shows come through here. And so everything in arts, entertainment, dining, and so much more. It's just a great place to be. Of course, on the flip side, you have to deal with the traffic, and I grew up in California, so it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely something that I've had to readjust. I thought St. Louis had traffic occasionally, but that's clearly not the case compared to Atlanta. So with all that, it's been a great year. I've grown so much in my current role, and I've had a lot to reflect on in my time here in this time of transition with some of those challenges, both personally and professionally. But also some of the rewards that I've received here, reconnecting and deepening relationships with people here, deepening relationships with members on my team, getting to know a certain set of skills that are new to me, and maybe even a knowledge base that I didn't have before. With that being said, back to the basics. So I would say probably around 2019, this had to have been before the pandemic. Chancellor Mark Wrighton, Chancellor at Washington University of St. Louis, he was one of those longtime, institute leaders. He was there for, I think, 24 years. Forgive me if I'm wrong there. But that's a long time to be a president or a chancellor for a university or college. So for 24 years, he was there. And after he had moved on and had a secondary role while the new chancellor came in, Andrew Martin, I reached out to his executive assistant to see if I can get a meeting with him. And it was a time where I was really looking at executive leadership and interviewing or meeting with a bunch of executive leaders at the university, because I thought, listen, if I want to be this thing, right, if I want to move forward in my career, I should talk to the people who are actually doing the work. And so many people were generous with their time. I mean, Dr. Shante Bolton, my current boss, she was one of them who I did that with, and it landed me in an opportunity that I'm in right now. But, Chancellor Martin, I would say Vice Chancellor Lori White, who's now the president of DePaul University, and who was on a previous episode of this podcast, was one of those people. The former provost, Holden Thorpe, was another person who met with me. So many of these people, because I just asked, I want to know about you. I want to know your leadership path, and what's some advice for somebody like me who would like to do something similar in the future. And so back to Chancellor Mark Wrighton, he took some time and said, actually, he agreed to meet with me. I asked for 30 minutes. I think he ended up giving me closer to an hour. It was one of the most enlightening and personally changing conversations that I've had in my entire career. And I've had quite a number of really strong, really thought-provoking and mind-shifting conversations. But Chancellor Mark Wrighton really gave me some key words of advice. And this is 2019, mind you. So I'm sitting in his office and he says to me, he asked me about me. After I learned all about him and all the good stuff, he asked about me, which I think all kind of healthy people do, is they don't want it to be one-sided. And so I shared a little bit with him about my background, my training, my experience, and where I wanted to go. And he asked me about how long I wanted to work, and I gave him a range. He kind of challenged me on that. Instead of retiring at 65, he said, why not work as long as you can? I know for some of you that sounds like a nightmare, but for some of us who love contribution and love the workplace, it's not such a bad idea. But one thing he said to me that I've passed on to a number of people over the years, as I often do when I get really strong or solid advice, was he said, people go into life or into the professional field making 10-year plans. Oftentimes in interviews, people will say, what's your 10-year plan? Maybe they'll say 5 to 10 years, but usually what's your 10-year plan? And Chancellor Wrighton challenged me on that notion. What he said was, a lot changes in 5 years. Why make a 10-year plan with so much changes in 5 years that you won't really know where you're at or where you're going to be in 5 years? And he recommended that I make a 5-year plan. So, and he just broke down his career. He said, from 50 to 55, he thought of things, from 55 to 60, and eventually, to retirement, to age 70 is when he retired, that he made 5-year increments. Now, what I did not know, what he did not know was maybe a handful of months after him and I met, that we would go into a global pandemic, the world would shut down, everybody would be impacted, loss of lives, obviously, careers, and people shifted in the way they thought about what was important to them. And it was the greatest illustration that within less than a year, when he said things could change a lot in 5 years, it didn't take 5 years, it took 1 year for things to shift. And so what I did was I took that piece of advice, that 5-year plan. And that's how I've kind of really looked at my life over my plans moving forward for the future. So, as I mentioned, I'm going to be turning 50 next June. And so we're getting to that place right now where, this was when I met with Chancellor Wrighton. I was, coming on 45, getting close to 45. And so I re-looked at my journal where I do a lot of my personal planning, and I created a personal strategic plan. And so this strategic plan has all the key areas that I want to be important in my life, right? Ultimately, where I wanted my career to be, where I wanted to be financially, health-wise, spirituality, relationships, personal friendships, family friend relationships, romantic relationships, my contribution where I wanted it to be, activities I wanted to do, travel, and so much more. I had all these categories. I actually still have that. I still have that journal. I've had that journal since 2004. Yeah, I've had that for 20 years now. I'm going on 21 years. It was a gift to me by Tiffany, Harold's mom. And so I put in there my strategic plan in all these areas. And I was real specific. I wrote down what was really important to me because I remember listening to, I think it was an interview by Steve Harvey when he said, if you write something down and if you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. And I thought, okay, well, let me write this stuff down, kind of that. I mean, there's some neuroscience around this. Some people call it the law of attraction, but either way, there's something really powerful about really making your intentions clear, plain, and making them kind of direct and maybe even time-based. And so this 5-year gap, right, this 5-year cap that Chancellor Wrighton gave me was perfect because it allowed for me to come up with the 5-year plan for where I wanted to be. And I got to tell you, so that was, let's say 2019, I think. So we're 6 years later. I had already been doing some of that kind of goal setting, and a lot of those goals had come true. But it's great now that I've actually reviewed that journal over and over again to be able to check off certain things that were really important. Like part of my personal goals was supporting my son through undergraduate and graduate school. Check, right? Part of it was making a certain income. Check. Part of it was visiting an island. And I went to Hawaii, and I'm going to St. Thomas pretty soon. Like, check. Puerto Rico, check, right? Just a bunch of random stuff. But part of the stuff was really personal, like service, like my giving. Ways in which I won't talk about here. But also, as many of you know, I started a scholarship fund for my mother. And so you can donate to that at Washington University as well. I'll put that information in the link of the info in this podcast. I'll give you a phone number and a website that you can go to. But absolutely, I've done that. And so I've done things that were both kind of self-motivated for me, but I've done things that were for others as well. And I started really thinking about, okay, so we're at 2025. Here we are. This year's wrapping up. This year it seems to have gone faster. I guess as you get older, that happens. But this year seems to have gone faster than any previous year. And I've really just wanted to take a minute to pull out maybe 4 areas of my personal strategic plan that I'm really going to be paying particular attention to. The other things still will get attention. My intentions are there, and I will still be working in those directions around my health, around my service, around all those things, relationships. But this one, these 4 here are areas that I'm going to be challenging myself with as we move into 2025. And I want to invite any of you who want to join me along in this challenge with your own personal strategic plans for your 5-year plan. Hey, it's 2025. This is a perfect year. 2020. Ooh, I'm going back in time, y'all. 2025 to 2029. You can start planning out and figure that out for yourself. All right, so here are 4 areas, though, that I'm going to challenge listeners to really focus in on in 2025. The first one is family. If you're fortunate enough and you're listening to this to have family, and that could be your immediate family, that could be your spouse, your children, that could be the friends who are so close to you that you consider them family. I have a number of them that are like that. Chloe Aristo, Giancarlo Romano, Ryan Daniels, Joey Romano, Sabrian Younger, Chris Tulisega, Jeremy Johnson, Charles Stevens, so many people. I'm missing some people. I'm going to get my butt kicked for this one. Leroy Dean, Eugene Parker, people who are so close to you that Jason Sweets, people who are so close to you that are family, but not just biological family, but just people who are close to you. My intention for 2025 is to stay more connected to family. As I've gone through my career, I've noticed a number of things. The first thing I noticed when I was here at Georgia Tech was within the first year here, our campus community lost a couple of people, a faculty member and a employee, and I was struck by how difficult and challenging that loss was for many of the campus community who knew those people. But what stood out to me even more was that part of that process for the university or more work or any workplace when somebody passes away, besides supporting their family and providing whatever needs to the community who's impacted by that loss, part of the process is replacing that person. Because our workplaces, our institutions, they go on forever. Georgia Tech's been around, I think, since 1853 or something like that. Georgia Tech is not going to die if I die, right? So it really hit me when I was experiencing this as an administrator, taking care of a campus community and figuring out how we can handle the passing of these important members of our community, that we were also within that planning to move on. And so it made me think a lot about why would I pay more attention, emotional attention and energy in the workplace than to the things that matter the most and the people that matter the most. And on top of that list is family. And so, spending more time with my son, keeping up with him more, checking in with him more, checking in with my siblings a little bit more. Some of my siblings and I have gotten a lot closer over the last few years. Checking in with friends randomly. Some of my friends are like, what the heck's going on? Why is Josh texting me? Because I'm guilty of being a bad friend sometimes, but calling friends out of the blue just to do a check-in for no reason, no needs, just to check in. And that's really important to me. And so family is really critical. And so for those of you who are fortunate to have family, I want to encourage you to join me on this journey of a year of 2025 where we focus on our families and just loving the heck out of our families every moment. Yeah, the career is great. Sure, you should have those goals. I'm guaranteeing it if you put in energy and work in that area since you're there most of your life, you're going to probably advance. But the one thing you won't get back and the people who will be with you when it's all said and done and when it's all over and when you're retired, if you're fortunate enough to retire, and when you pass on from this life is your family. So my energy and my intention is to focus on family. Area number 2 is friendships. So closely related to family is my connection to my friendships. As I mentioned, I have quite a number of people who I consider like siblings to me. And I have a handful of siblings that I love dearly. But my friendships have been so critical in my life. I mean, some of my hardest times when family couldn't be around. I mean, if you've listened to one of my previous episodes where I talked about my low spot, Mary Elliott was there. Jill Stratton was there, right? Like Charles Stevens was there when I was going through my lowest moments, having my hardest time, when I really wanted to give up on this whole like life thing, this whole career thing, everything. I just wanted to throw in the towel. I was just at my rock bottom, and my friendships really pulled me through. Not to say that my family wasn't there. My family was there. I called on them and they helped where they could. But usually a number of us don't live in close proximity to our family where they can just swoop in. Or some of us have strained relationships with family or other dynamics. And my friendships, they've always showed up for me. Those people who I'm the closest to, Giancarlo Romano was there. Ryan Daniels was there. Charles Stanford was there. Francesca Daniels was there. So these people who, in my toughest times, and my best times, they're there for me. They're there to pick me up, and they're also there to cheer me on and celebrate me. Angela Hobson was there. Of course, shout out to Lou and shout out to Max. So because these friendships are so near and dear, I really want to give some critical attention and clear attention to them. So there's somebody who I want to mention. His name is Brian Arrowwood. Brian actually, when I transferred to Calvary Chapel High School in Santa Ana, he wasn't there. He had just graduated he was a senior actually, and I was going into my junior year, and then I moved on and played football on the team he used to play on, and I knew his younger brother, and so Brian and I never, in our younger days, and were particularly close, but there was a time where we really needed him. And I remember I was able to reach out to Brian via Facebook, just a cold message to him just to get some support. We needed some legal support, and his brother's a well-known attorney and a friend of ours as well from our same school. And so Brian came through, got a hold of his brother, and I was reflecting on this at some point in this past year here in Atlanta. And I decided, hey, I'm thinking about Brian. Let me just, for the first time ever, send him a private message. And so I sent him a thank you for really showing up for us when we needed him, when we were in a real hard time. He showed up for the fellas, and he took care of things and made the connections in order to get us through a jam. And Brian said something to me that was so profound. And Brian, if you're listening, you may or may not take credit for this, because you may or may not have made this up, but I'm going to give you credit because you taught me this. Brian said to me, I take my friendships as a responsibility. I take my friendships as a responsibility. And that hit me hard because I really think about how I can be very neglectful. I can get caught up in work, long hours, my own travel, my own life here in Atlanta. And sometimes my friends who are not right next to me aren't top of mind, or at least they're not in front of my face, so I'm not reaching out to them. But Brian saying that hit me in my soul. And so after that, I was going through some coaching with Francesca Daniels as she's doing her grad program. And one of the intentions that I made was to do that, to take my friendships as a responsibility. And so folks, in the 2025, I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to challenge you to take your friendships as a responsibility. Be intentional about your connections with your friendships. Even if it means expanding your relationships, that's fine. But I'm talking about deepening, staying connected, checking in on those people. Sometimes you check in on people and you don't realize how much they needed it, right? And so that's a special responsibility that we all have. And so I'm committing to that moving into 2025. All right, 2 more, folks. So the third one is really back to the basics. This is kind of one of my OG kind of ideals that has been so important, but back to the routine. So, I love a life where you can jump on a plane and jet set to wherever you want to, but that's not the life that I have. I haven't been gifted with that life yet. I love a life where, at the last minute, friends can call me, we can go out and grab dinner and drinks, but that's not necessarily aligning with my health lifestyle. So I don't get to do that on a random Tuesday night. What's really helped me in my career has been having some routines. And so I've shared this before. I stole this from some online person, but I control my first part of my day and my last part of my day. Those are the 2 routines that I guarantee I can control. When I show up to work, my calendar could look one way and then it goes crazy because some other crisis comes up or some matter needs attention. So I can't always control my work day, but my routines on my mornings, my evenings, and also some of my weekends is the same way. So I get up every morning, listen to the same mix, drink some water, drink some coffee, listen to literally the same music mix. I think I mentioned it twice. Okay. Maybe that's important. So you should write that one down. I then listen to a spiritual message, usually a sermon or something, but choose whatever you want based on your agnostic or faith-based background, but listen to something positive. So I start my day not ingesting news, not ingesting all the woes of the world or within my local community. I start my day really with positive, life-giving things. Water, coffee. Coffee is very life-giving. Great messages. And then I hit the gym. I work out for an hour, hour and a half. And then after that, I feel like I've done so much within those first few hours of waking up that by the time I go to work, I've won the day. And then, do my work day. And at the end of the day, I wrap up with eating a clean meal for the most part, except for weekends when I cheat. And then, I go to bed at usually around the same time. And then I start all over again. And so I think having routines is really critical. There's other things that are more boring, like, I make sure that my bed's made. I make sure that my stuff's put away. I make sure that my shoes are put away. I lay out my clothes in the morning, whatever the routine is. But I do things so often that I don't have to think about it. Things that set me up for success, I've done it so many times. They've become part of my routine that I don't even have to think about them. They're just automated. And it's hard, right? It's like I feel like bad habits are easy to build. Good habits seem to be a little harder, but I got to tell you, if you give yourself, a handful of weeks of some form of routine of things that move you forward in a positive way, it will really set the tone for your day, set the intention for your day, and it'll get you to where you want to be. So have a little discipline. People, discipline is not that difficult. Just do mundane things consistently. Yeah, and even when you don't want to do them, that's the best time to do them. So just do them. And so if you can have a little routine, then I think you'll see yourself having some groundedness, some control in a world that's uncontrollable, some control, and you can get yourself moving forward. All right, I promise this will be a short one. I'm already over time, but I'm going to go into the last one, which is service and contribution. And so this is a piece that I've talked about in the past when I went through my bouts of being down and depressed and having a really dark place, how service had really put me back on track. And I think there's something really interesting with the brain here, right? The brain can't handle both. The brain can't handle woe is me, and also I need to open this door for somebody, right? The brain can't handle woe is me and, I'm excited about getting this work together to help, build this house or help, collect groceries for this family. The brain can't say, woe is me, or at the same time say, I'm super excited I get to write this letter to my friend who I really care about, a handwritten letter to them. So these acts of service, right? This ability to contribute to the world and to contribute to others is something that's really powerful from a mental health perspective. But not only that, it feels good to be a person that is a contribution. People are constantly searching for what's the meaning of life. Why am I here? Why was I born? I didn't choose to be here. And I found that my purpose here A big part of my purpose here is being a contribution. And that's through my service. That's through my work that I do on the job when I clock in and clock out. That's through my friendships. But giving to others, that service piece is so critical and so important. So my challenge to myself and to anybody who's willing to listen to this podcast is to find a way to carve in some intentional time to serve. And maybe it's on the job, but maybe not. Maybe it's volunteering coaching, or maybe it's working at the food shelter, or maybe it's just bagging up some clothes that you don't wear anymore and you want to donate them to the Goodwill or another agency. But find a way to serve and be a contribution. Or maybe it's not giving of money, but maybe it's giving of time. Just calling that friend and listening to them because you haven't reached out to them in a while, and really listening. Just listen. Don't have any agenda, any cool stories to tell. I'm guilty of wanting to tell cool stories, but more so just being with them and listening and making it about them. That's a really free way of being able to serve and to give and to be a contribution. So that's it, folks. Those are my 4 of my long list that already exist. These are the 4 that I'm going to really put a lot of energy into my 5-year plan as we go into 50. And I'm going from 50 to 54 now, right? So the 5-year plan is going to be focused on the family, focus on my friendships, commit to my routines, and focus on service and being a contribution. I hope you enjoyed that episode. In 2025, I'm going to be jumping on this podcast a little bit more. I have a few people that I've queued up who I will be getting ready to release their episodes in the new year. And so we're super excited to do that. And so take a look at the information if you want to give to the SUJ Rakijuma Annual Fund. That's a great opportunity to give a deserving student a scholarship and some money to help them through their graduate studies at Washington University in St. Louis. Otherwise, I'll look forward to seeing y'all in the new year. Have a happy 2025. Thank you for listening to the Best Worst Thing podcast. I'm your host, Josh Woiler. Music is produced by Josh One. You can follow him at BoomNote on Instagram and Twitter, and Josh One on Spotify. Our episodes are edited by Cooled Jets Music. You can follow him at Cooled Jets Music on Instagram. Our marketing is designed by Francesca Daniels. You can find her at FrankandKitty24 on Instagram. And our overall design is by Inspired Design with Ryan Daniels. You can find them at getinspired.design on Instagram. Thank you for listening to The Best Worst Thing.
This one's for